Uh, First thing before we get started, just want to let everybody know that the trade call got done last night around 7:30, so the trade is executed. But obviously, you guys know that everybody, all the players involved, have to get physical. So these guys will come in here, and obviously the different players in the trade will go to the respective destinations, get physical, and until then, trade won't officially be consummated. So can definitely talk about the guys, and hopefully I think they're flying in here today, so they'll arrive here in Detroit this evening. But we're excited about the two additions to our team. With Lindy and Dennis, we're getting two guys I think are high character human beings that'll kind of have the same edge that we want here with JB and our team. They compete between the lines, they know how to play, and they're good people. I had conversations with both of them last night, and I think they're both excited to be here. I think Dennis has gone through a lot with movement in terms of getting traded from Brooklyn to Golden State, and obviously during this deadline going, flipping between Golden State, Miami, Utah, and then us. So, had a couple conversations with him yesterday. He's excited to be here, and I think both will help us not only this year, but, maybe a chance going forward as well.
As you went about this, Trajan, was there a goal you had in mind of not give up too much, keep the core together? Can you just kind of take us through the thought process a little bit, what you were looking to do?
Yeah, I think you put it pretty succinctly. We mainly were taking in calls instead of placing calls, to be honest with you. We like the core. We like the unit that we have. I think JB and his staff have done a great job, and these guys believe in one another. They enjoy coming to work with one another every day and competing between the lines with one another. And they think, they want to make a run at the playoffs. So I think we have a good thing going. But obviously with the loss of J.I., we wanted to understand what can we do to make us a little bit better if we can't get a lot better. I think right now it wasn't an opportunity to get a lot better. The things that we looked at were really expensive, and for us right now, I think it was at a piece where we didn't have to give up a lot, but we felt could really help this unit and could help Cade.
Trajan, your first trade deadline with the Pistons, obviously your first trade deadline with JB, your first trade deadline with Tom. Speak of the process of keeping the two of them informed, collaborating with them as you were working your way through the trade deadline and where you finally netted out the decisions you made.
Yeah, I think we went in, my lines of communication with both have been great, and especially we knew starting about a week ago that everything was going to pick up, so we had an initial kind of foundational call with Tom and a meeting with JB about opportunities that could be out there, but things that we wanted to do with using our space and adding an additional ball handler. We really wanted to use that space to bring in some assets. I think we did do that. I think we might have had the opportunity. We gave ourselves the opportunity to bring in more, but there were some deals that fell apart with some other teams, and that would have brought in some more assets. But I think most importantly is we were able to bring in an additional ball handler to help this team with the absence of J.I. going forward, especially into the stretch run. A guy that has shown that he has played on playoff teams, can really help in starting units and in second units as well. So, but the lines of communication, I talked to Tom almost every day from Sunday up to Thursday, and just letting him know what was going on, what are some things that were on the table, and with JB obviously daily in this building. So I think we were really connected in what we wanted to do, and I think achieved what we both thought was what was important to add to this team.
Obviously, you did a great job at applying for it. I'm sure you sold, obviously ownership and everybody had your vision long term, but how much was making the playoffs this year a realistic goal in your mind when you look at the roster?
Didn't even enter my thought process, to be honest with you. Back last summer, it wasn't even something I thought about at all. So the position that our players and JB have put us in, for us it was playing meaningful basketball after the trade deadline. Did that mean play for a play-in? Or just try to play to be close to it? But these guys have put themselves in a position where they believe that they can be a playoff team, which is exciting. And I think at this point we know that that's important to them, and doing something that can add to that and give them the best possible chance of doing that this season was important to us as well. And we were aware of that and kept that in mind with the decisions that we made leading into the deadline.
You mentioned the split the idea and also the need for a secondary ball handler, but just looking specifically at Schroeder's fit on the court, do you see him as more so that second unit guy, or do you see him playing next to Cade as well and being somebody who can take pressure off?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's more of a question for JB, honestly, but I think he can do both. I think he will do both. I think he's shown that he can play aside some really good players. He can run his own unit, and he can be successful both ways. So those are some of the things that we took into account when making this decision in adding a player at this time.
You touched on it a little bit, the fact that this team is now competing for a playoff spot. How much has the success and will the success moving forward kind of like alter the foundation and the plan that you actually established when you purchased this job?
I think it's always try to get better all the time, but sometimes a move may look like you're taking a step back. I'm not talking about this, but I'm talking in general. So maybe in the future we have to take a step back to feel like we are going to move forward with some different things. But I think at this point it's continuing to try to get better, trying to move in the direction of continuing to improve. That's what we always want to do, and I think with these moves we give ourselves the ability to do that. But do we think we're a little bit ahead of where we thought we were going into the season? Sure. But it doesn't mean we're going to do some things that put ourselves in a difficult position. We always want to stay flexible and be opportunistic, and I think the things that we did here keep us in that place.
You kind of answered that already, but you've spoken since last summer about not skipping steps and being very patient and deliberate in the process. You wound up striking a middle ground where you did get some future draft capital and improve the roster. Was there anything, as they kept winning games, was there anything that crossed your table here in the last week where that almost made you want to push more chips in for the future, or did it not get that close?
I don't think anything got close enough where we had to have a discussion with another team that went that direction where it's pushing the chips. And now, did those ideas cross our mind over the past week? Sure, we had discussions about it, but nothing even got close to a discussion. But we did think about it. Sure, I think we have to. The way that we were headed, we had to explore everything in terms of internal discussions.
A team is such a fragile ecosystem. Like, you change one thing, and for better or worse, you kind of risk disrupting whatever the chemistry is.
Yeah.
So, not just what you see on film, but like the personality piece. How do you assess when you're looking at moves whether or not the personalities that you are bringing in fit what it is that you guys have working well right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and believe me, we were very aware of that and took a lot of that into consideration when making the moves that we were looking at making and thinking about them and analyzing them. That we didn't want to disturb our team. We didn't want to disturb our style of play. The players that we brought in, we wanted to fit the way we were playing seamlessly. But also the locker room is important. Somebody in my front office said we'd be shocked if we weren't a top 5 locker room in terms of where we are now in the season and the way that these guys get along, which I think has played an important part to our success so far. So you try to do as much digging on the personalities and the character of the guys that you're bringing in, and especially recently with the teams that they've been on, and then you try to make the best decision possible for your team, but also, as a locker room, but also as a unit on the court. And so we took all those things into we thought about a lot of those things in making these decisions, but great question.
What's the key to meshing those guys together? And, obviously a time where it has to be pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of discussion with these guys coming in the door, understanding that they're wanted here, and these are the guys that we felt were really important. Obviously, it was a trade where we received Josh Richardson and Lindy, and specifically Lindy was a guy I'd known Josh from before, But Lindy was a guy that I liked. I saw him a lot. Obviously, we were in the same division when I was in New Orleans and he was in OKC, so I got to see his growth through his 3 years there. Got to see him a lot last year in the playoffs. Every time we played him, I saw him in pre-game workouts and asked some of the coaching staff about him, and they really didn't want to let me know who he was and what he was about. But I got to determination of what a high-character human being and hard worker he is. And then Dennis, I've watched through the course of his years in Europe playing with the German national team and obviously with the teams he's been on, and felt from the standpoint of both players they would be a fit here. But I think it's getting them in here, letting them know that they are important in what we're going to do, not only now, but maybe going forward. Let them know what we have done, what our environment, what our culture is about, and how important it is for them to come in and fit in seamlessly. But I think both guys will do just that. But we'll work hard to make sure that they fit in quickly, and that their presence is important for us.
There was a lot of movement from other teams in the Eastern Conference. We saw Milwaukee make moves, Cleveland made moves. Did any of that factor into your decision making, or was it strictly about the Pistons timeline and decision?
Yeah, we didn't really look at other teams. We stayed here. I mean, in terms of our own decision making, for us, it's how do we get better on our own timeline without, again, the idea of not skipping steps was important to us, and just stay locked in and focus on us right now and how do we get better.
Well, I think Cade, obviously, he was a accomplishment to make his first All-Star team. The kind of goes hand in hand with maybe not knowing what to expect coming into the year, but just how big of an accomplishment is that, not only for him, but just on where this franchise is right now?
Yeah, I'm very excited for Cade. It's well deserved. He's put in a lot of work over the summer, and it's this thing that he was focused on. I think obviously when you're the best player on a team that has shown the success that we have, you're going to have that opportunity, and for him to get voted in by the coaches is I think a tremendous accomplishment, and again, very, very well deserved with what he has done to help take this team to the level where we're at. But for him, I think he's very happy, but he's also really focused on getting this team to the playoffs, which is, I think, shows who he is, shows his character, and shows his competitive spirit. So obviously very lucky to have a player and a person of that caliber here with us in Detroit, leading this team and this franchise going forward. So very happy for he and his family.
Maybe where is this team surprised you the most? I mean, you mentioned you're further along than you probably thought you would be at this point. So where have they grown more quickly, than you thought they would this season?
I think just the cohesiveness as a unit and as a team. Their chemistry and how they get along is hard to find. I don't take that lightly. You don't see that often. It doesn't matter if it's a losing team or a winning team or a middle-of-the-road team. Like just the energy, the positivity that they come with every day is hard to find. And a lot of credit goes to each and every one of the players, but also to JV and his staff for creating that positive energy every day and continuing to communicate with them that this is going to be positive, there's going to be joy here, we're going to do this together, win or lose, and we're going to be resilient in our approach. Whether we win big, whether we lose, we're going to come back every day, and we're going to prepare for the next game. And they have stayed steadfast in that approach, which has been a lot of fun, and I have a lot of respect for what they've done thus far this season.
It feels like Malik's been a big part of that, and he's talked about the fit here and maybe wanting to stay. I guess what kind of a priority is that for you? How is it?
Yeah, he came to me a couple weeks ago and he said, "Please don't trade me. I want to be here," which means a lot. Again, in the summer when we talked about players that we're going after and players that we want on the roster, we want guys that want to be here. And he's a guy that has said from day one that he wants to be in Detroit and has continued to echo that, and I think with his actions and his play has shown that. So we're excited that he's here. We're excited that he still wants to be here, and he's done a tremendous job. When I talk about the positivity and being team first and competing between the lines, he's done that so far this season. It's been a great example for our young guys.
Can you speak to the impact that you believe Dennis Schroeder will have on players like Marcus Sasser, Ron Holland, who saw their ability to handle the ball go up once Jay Nadi went down?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, with the loss of J.I., the last month there has been, whenever you have a vacuum of a player that has done so well, other guys have to come up and fill in for that loss. And I think they've done a fantastic job of that. I think our team played very well this past month and did some things that I think the rest of the league didn't expect, especially with the loss of a key player like that. But I think with Dennis as a guy, again, the experience that he's had on playing on some good teams and playing beside some really good players, leading teams, playing in complementary roles as well. He'll come in here, and I think he's going to help a lot with our younger players, just with the professional mindset coming forth every day, but playing both ends and competing, being able to create for others, being able to create for himself, playing alongside Cade, running maybe different units as well. We're excited about getting him in.
With Cade being obviously the face of the franchise and only 23, how closely, if at all, are you working with him while you make some of these decisions?
Yeah, I've been in communication with Cade. I communicated with him a couple weeks ago, too, leading into this deadline, and just said, look, it's important to me what you guys have built, what we're building, and I don't want to shake that up too much. Obviously, if something comes across the table that I feel makes us much better going forward and puts us in a better position, then maybe, some things will change. So he was aware of that, and we spoke, and he just said, look, I trust your vision, and some of the things that you told me in the summer, you executed on. So, he's been great. I've kept him in the loop on some stuff and let him know what we were doing yesterday before we executed everything. So I think he's excited about the additions. Obviously, I think 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗪 was a huge a guy in the locker room that a lot of people liked. So obviously his departure is never easy. When you depart with a person that maybe has been difficult or can be high maintenance, it's not as difficult. But 𝗙𝗢𝗟's been great. He's been a professional, and he's been a guy that everybody has liked. He's come in every day. So the departure of him was difficult. Me telling him that we had to release him is never easy. But Cade has been aware of most of this thing the whole time. He's been great with the understanding of we're going to try to do the best that we can to continue to make positive steps in making this organization better.
Obviously, with this deadline, there was a lot of uncertainty on how not uncertainty, but just how the second apron would impact things, trying to get better. Just being one of the few teams in the league who can kind of sit back this deadline. I guess how informative was this just going forward, seeing how the teams were able to operate and maneuver and what they did just to compete while keep things balanced financially?
Yeah, I have a great front office staff, and my cap strategy group is completely aware of what's going on in the league and keeping an understanding on the landscape and where we want to be and where we don't want to get into, because it does put us in financial troubles, and not just financial, but the ability to operate and stay flexible with your roster. So we're aware of that, which is big around us saying we don't want to skip steps. So there's going to be a time, and hopefully when we can make a big move. But until then, it's doing the right things, putting ourselves in places where we can continue to get better, with staying flexible at the same time financially.
You talked about Malik Beasley already, but what about the other two veterans that you added, Trajan and Tim Hardaway Jr., especially because of the fact that Hardaway is like in a similar boat as Beasley?
And look, all three of them have been fantastic. I mean, Tobias has been great. His professionalism, his approach every day, like when you watch him play, there's a reason why when you look down the log of his games per season, he plays 75 every year plus. He takes pride in playing games. He hates sitting out. He doesn't want to come out of games. In the game down in Orlando when he got concussed, we had to force him to go back to the locker room. He wanted to play with it. It's just a guy that loves to play. He takes a huge amount of pride of playing games and helping his team win. And we're lucky to have him. And I think just his approach has really helped these young guys every day to show them this is what being a professional is about. And Tim the same way. He's played on some really good teams, played with some really good players. And again, those are two guys that want to be here. When we acquired them in the summer, obviously one in free agency and in the trade, they both said, I'm excited to be in Detroit and take this and try to and help take this organization and this franchise to the next level and become a winner here, turn this thing around. So they played huge roles in doing just that. We're lucky to have them.
Where were you when the basketball world stopped and shock on Saturday into Sunday and the Luka and Anthony Davis trade went down?
I was sleeping. These days have been long, man. I was sleeping. I was shocked when I woke up middle of the night. But when it went down, I was out. Woke up a couple hours later and saw it. It's shocking. I have a lot of good friends with Dallas. Obviously, Rob Pelinka and I go way back. When he used to work with Arn and I got drafted, that's who represented me. So pretty crazy with those two players getting exchanged. But I kind of no comment on that one. Luka's a special player, but obviously I think down in Dallas they saw some things that everybody in this room doesn't know.